The show opened with music, and the host introduced Paul Stanley from KISS. Most people know him as the Starchild, but in 1977 something happened backstage that shook him to his core. After years of wild nights and chaotic behavior with groupies, he contracted an STD. The shock was so severe that he quietly changed his lifestyle almost overnight, becoming far more cautious and focused. That experience, kept private for decades, was one of many moments that shaped who he became. Paul Stanley was born Stanley Bert Eisen on January 20, 1952, in New York City. From the beginning he carried a secret that affected his life profoundly. He was born with level 3 microtia. His right ear never developed properly, leaving only a small nub where an ear should have been and no canal to carry sound. He could hear only on his left side. There was no stereo world for him, no sense of direction. As a child he felt different before he even understood what that word meant. He grew his hair long to hide the deformity, but children still noticed, teasing him with hurtful names like one-eared monster. He was often the only Jewish kid in a mostly Catholic neighborhood, and the bullying left lasting scars. Classrooms were difficult, he struggled to follow conversations and group activities felt threatening. His mother tried covering the ear with hats, which only made him feel more exposed, and his father remained cold and unimpressed by his interests. Loneliness became familiar. At 11 something changed. He joined the school choir, and for the first time he felt included. Singing made him feel like he had a place. His self-conscious posture straightened, and he began to imagine a future built around music. Home, however, was fragile. His parents fought often, and he eventually learned his father had an affair. Their fractured relationship made Paul distrustful, and even later in life he struggled with loyalty and commitment. His younger sister, born in 1960, developed schizophrenia and addiction in her teens. Her hospitalizations and violent episodes devastated the family. When Paul became successful, he paid for her care and for her child, but her suffering shaped him forever. Music became his escape. When he saw the Beatles on television in 1964, it felt like a door opening. He devoured records by Eddie Cochran, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and doo-wop groups. He bought his first acoustic guitar at 13 and saved enough for a Silvertone Electric from Sears the following year. He practiced for hours daily, compensating for his hearing loss by leaning toward the sound. He joined early bands like post-war Baby Boom and later Uncle Joe, playing small bars in Queens for $10 to $25 a night. His father insisted music led to failure, but Paul ignored him and pushed harder. Rejections burned, including one brutal audition for a Jimi Hendrix tribute band where other musicians mocked his ear. That moment planted the idea of creating a stage persona, someone larger, untouchable, invulnerable. In 1970 he met Gene Simmons, still called Gene Klein then, at a jam session. Both were young, ambitious, and eager to play heavier music than the folk rock dominating New York. They formed Wicked Lester, recorded at Electric Lady Studios, and even attracted Epic Records, but the label shelved their album. The setback forced Paul and Gene to rethink their direction. They lived broke in a cramped apartment, writing constantly and building the foundation of their partnership. Tensions flared, fights happened, but they kept coming back to each other because both knew they needed the other to make something bigger than themselves. By 1973 Wicked Lester had collapsed, but out of its ashes came a new vision. With Peter Criss and Sunace Fraley they formed KISS. Paul sketched the lightning bolt logo and created his Starchild persona, makeup becoming a mask for pain. Their first gig in Queens drew fewer than 10 people, but it was a beginning. Manager Bill O'Coin secured a deal with Casablanca Records, and with a $50,000 advance they crafted elaborate stage gear. There were dangerous growing pains. Gene Simmons set his hair on fire the first night he breathed flames, and Paul threw beer on him to put it out. But audiences loved the spectacle, so it stayed. Their debut album in 1974 charted modestly, yet relentless touring built a fanbase. Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill followed, and from a rushed writing session came Rock and Roll All Night, which turned into their defining anthem. Alive sent the band into the mainstream, and from there they rose fast. Destroyer in 1976 solidified them, with a cinematic sound and tracks like Detroit Rock City. By 1977 the band was earning millions, selling merch, touring relentlessly, and appearing in comic books that even contained droplets of their blood mixed into the ink. But success came with chaos. Drugs and alcohol crept into the group. Ace Frehley struggled. Peter Criss drifted. Relationships strained. Paul remained the anchor, increasingly focused on songwriting and business decisions. His solo album in 1978 charted well, but Dynasty in 1979, with its disco-tinged "I Was Made for Lovin' You," divided fans. The early 1980s were rough. Music from The Elder nearly crushed their momentum. Members fought, albums stumbled, and Peter Criss left. Later, Ace Frehley was gone too. Yet in 1983, Unmasking on MTV revived interest, and albums like Lick It Up and Crazy Nights brought KISS into a new era. Paul often carried the band creatively when Gene pursued acting, even producing some records himself. Tours drew enormous crowds, though internal conflicts simmered. The 1990s brought change and loss. Eric Carr's death in 1991 deeply affected Paul. Revenge in 1992 was a cathartic return to form, powerful and emotional. Still, tensions with Gene resurfaced. Carnival of Souls tried to tap into grunge but failed to land. Then came the giant reunion tour in 1996, a spectacle that earned more than $140 million. Fans were thrilled, though behind the scenes old habits returned. Ace and Peter relapsed and were replaced by musicians wearing their makeup, something Paul later found surreal and unsettling. Financial success could not mask the fractures within the band. Paul found solace in unexpected places. In 1999, he starred in The Phantom of the Opera in Toronto, training intensely to master the role. Wearing the Phantom's mask felt symbolic for someone who had hidden his ear condition for so long. The audience loved him, and the experience encouraged him to finally open up publicly about his microtia in 2013. He began supporting organizations for children with facial differences, receiving letters from kids who saw themselves in him. Vulnerability became strength. His memoir, Face the Music, published in 2014, revealed painful truths: his difficult childhood, fights with Gene, a costly divorce, the pressure of fame. It became a bestseller. He later formed the R&B group Soul Station, returning to the doo-wop roots that helped shape his voice. He continued painting large abstract works, building a successful art career that eventually generated millions in sales. KISS embarked on their final tour, End of the Road, which closed in 2023 at Madison Square Garden after 250 shows. Paul admitted age, exhaustion, and the death of Ace Frehley made him ready to stop. He promised that KISS would live on as digital avatars in the future. Even after the final curtain, he continued painting, donating major proceeds to charity, and launching music programs for kids with disabilities, saying that charity was not optional.